6 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. We'll pause for a moment of silent reflection. Do the pledge. Aaron, will you lead us, please? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks. Willie, will you lead us in a roll call and determination of quorum?
Brian Williams,
Here.
Jerry Burmeister,
Here.
Corey Hall,
Here.
Steve Denny. Is he on?
No, he's super sick.
Okay. Marissa Skaggs.
Here.
Okay.
4 of 5 members, we have a quorum. We have the minutes for the January 9th meeting in the Google Drive. Any questions, comments, concerns? Any changes? If there, oh, go ahead.
I make a motion to accept the minutes.
Perfect. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval of the January 9th, 2025 meeting minutes. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Moving on to clerk treasurer's report. We have a clerk treasurer's report. However, we do not have the claims for the month of January as they're still doing year end. Willie, do you have anything to add to the clerk treasurer's?
We have the general fund numbers here for the end of the year, which are good. And like I said, we're still working on closing out the books for the year.
Any questions for Willie? Okay, thanks. Moving on to department reports. Chief Farr is out tonight. So we'll move on to Aaron in the park.
Good evening. Good inside stuff right now. A big shout out to our staff. It's amazing how they can just flip the switch from being mechanics to being family modelers. So they're in the process of giving the community building a facelift right now. You guys get a chance next week, so you might check out. It looks completely different from what it did. They spackled the paneling, seams, and painted it, so it literally looks like they hung new drywall, new door going in, countertops. So updating that space, which has been much needed. Working on a partnership with the YMCA to share that space with them. Because during graduation time and summer months, just having the community building available for rentals, we unfortunately have to turn quite a few people away. So opening that space up on weekends and evenings, will allow us to get some. So other than that, it's fun. Any questions for me?
Aaron, I did see where the person moved out at the golf course.
Yes.
Can you touch on that subject?
So Sums was there for 7 years. Did a real nice job with a lot of updates to that building. They unfortunately just couldn't make it work with the seasonality of it. We've had a couple of inquiries about the building, shown it a couple times, so we're hopeful someone will give it another go, have a restaurant out there. It's really nice during the golf season and walk the beaten path in the winter months. It's more of a destination than let's go find a place and drive by. So, but we're hopeful we'll get something else in there before the golf season really gets going.
Thank you.
Anything else for Aaron?
Thanks, Aaron.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Planning department.
Yes, hello. Oh, I got it, Denise. Thank you, ma'am. So we have 3 updates for you. For the month of January, we started 2 plan updates. So our comprehensive plan and our downtown revitalization plans. The downtown plan's about 10 years old at this point, so it was really due for an update. We're really excited. We had a lot of really good feedback at our initial meeting already. Our comprehensive plan also started the same night. It was the very last week of January. And again, had some really exciting ideas moving forward. So all of those information and surveys and things we're working with our consultant on, we'll be posting on a project website that they've created, so you can kind of see where each plan is in the progress. Each one should take about a year, so we're hoping to have these done, wrapped up by January of 2026. And the other item that we started with JP Hall and his graduate assistants at Ball State in the Historic Preservation Office is the update of our, excuse me, of our National Register inventory. So this was something that we had an interim report done by the state in 1984. And then when we became a National Register of Historic Places in 1991, an inventory was done then as well. So it is quite overdue for an update. Basically what this will be is the graduate assistants are going to make us an entire new inventory of every building structure that's within our National Register district, which includes our little local district as well. And that allows us to see what's been modified, recommendations for bringing all the buildings within that inventory district back to their original look if they've been modified, anything that's been demolished, which we have had quite a few within that national district. And then also just kind of recommendations for keeping that document updated. So we had 3 really exciting plan updates begin in the month of January. And that should also take a year just based on the school schedule for the students who are working on it. And that's another thing where they will be coming out and doing site visits for every building in the district. They're going to be taking pictures. We're going to give them vests so people know who they are. They're not going on anyone's property or anything like that. But we'll be posting all that kind of stuff on our Facebook and the Historic Preservation Department page. So that's all I have. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for Hannah? Nope, thanks.
Yep.
Scott? Scott, can you make sure that podium mic is on? There you go.
Is that a laser printer? Okay, I just want to make sure for the next part. This is the old one. That was last month's. Okay. Well, all right, I'll do it off of memory. So that's last month, so disregard it. So I think the big news is we've got the bid in for the winning bid, and we're going to talk about that actually in new business here in a little bit. And I didn't have anything other than that, although, Madam President, if I can go ahead, and since the next item is the mini roundabout, talk about that for just introduce that subject, if that's okay.
Yeah, just pause for a second. Anybody have any questions regarding town manager stuff for Scott before we do that? Okay, sure. Yep.
So in a little bit, we're going to have a presentation on the mini roundabout that would go here at State and High. That project, the problem that we have there is, and they'll go more into detail, is, but from the town standpoint, from managing traffic, the first criteria is that we have to calm traffic down. We've had too many near misses with pedestrians right here at this intersection. So these 4 main legs, right, between Main and Pelton Avenue to High, here from State up to Water Street. Did I say High? Well, I meant Broadway. And then from here to High Street. So we are starting under a concept right now, probably going to go to design. There'll be a bump out here that will calm the traffic coming into town. All right. We've all seen incidents with a semi comes flying through at 40 miles an hour, trying to get through the intersection before the light turns red. The other thing is that with calming, you don't want to back up traffic. So as you look at this roundabout, the other criteria we want to meet is not only calming traffic down, but then we're not backing traffic up. So that was the second criteria that we looked at. This is an opportunity. It's a pilot project. It is not using Pendleton's money. There is an in-kind contribution with, because it's temporary and is going to be pulled out. The concept is easy enough to construct for the test that we're going to use our own forces to lay down the mats and which we'll talk about in a little bit. And that is going to be our contribution. So there's not any tax dollars, local tax dollars. It's a pilot project. Some community was going to do it. We applied for it and we got it probably because it's the most relevant situation that they wanted to study. And then the next thing is a good point, is if it looks like it's going to work for us after it comes out, then going forward, we're probably going to be high on the list for federal funds to construct one if we want to do it in that location or another location. I think roundabouts, you need to know there's 4 types of roundabouts. You get a little bit of education on that here in a minute. Mini roundabouts are rare at this point, but I think you're going to find they're going to be prolific, especially in more neighborhoods as they find that it can be safer for pedestrians, and the type of crashes that do happen in an intersection are less severe when it involves a roundabout. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ryan from our MPO, MCOG, and he'll go into detail and we'll be open to questions.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ryan Phelps, one of the principal transportation planners with the Madison County Council of Governments. Do I just say whenever to switch slides? I mean, is this a?
You might be able to control that. You have to turn the slide on. Okay. Got it? There we go.
All right, so Ryan Phelps, I'm one of the 2 principal transportation planners with the Madison County Council of Governments. I'm here to talk about the mini roundabout test project that's part of our Protect 2030 application to the USDOT. So just a little bit of background, and then I'll go over a kind of a high level what mini roundabouts are and what the intention of the project is. So this is, as Scott said, a temporary mini roundabout. It is a test pilot that was funded through the USDOT Safe Streets and Roads for All program. It's a demonstration grant. And what that means is that it has to be temporary. The full intention behind a demonstration project is to test out new innovative solutions for improving safety. And then they have to be removed as part of the project. For anybody who's not familiar with a mini roundabout, and Scott did note that there are multiple different types of roundabouts. And there's a really big difference between a mini roundabout and what's called a neighborhood traffic circle. But a mini roundabout is, it operates the same way as a standard roundabout. It's still a single lane. It's circular. It's got the splitter islands for deflection so that cars have to go out and around. The difference between a standard roundabout and a mini roundabout is the size. The mini roundabout is generally 40 to 90 feet in diameter across the intersection. So that's about the size of the circle that fits inside of the intersection. And then the island, the center part, is obviously smaller than 40 to 90 feet. The big difference between a mini roundabout and a neighborhood traffic circle and standard roundabouts is that the middle island and then the splitter islands are completely traversable. So the middle island and then these splitter islands are completely traversable, and that means that large vehicles can travel directly over them. So because of the size of the intersection, they're going to turn just like they normally would, right across the center island. Mini roundabouts have been shown similar to standard roundabouts to reduce crashes, specifically right angle crashes. The Federal Highway Proven Safety Countermeasure reports, so lots of years and years of study on roundabouts as a whole have shown that they reduce fatal and incapacitating or serious injury crashes by 82%. And a lot of those crashes are because you're eliminating right turn or left turn crashes. Roundabouts also improve traffic flow over stop control. And then they work within the existing space. So this mini roundabout as a whole is supposed to work within a very small intersection. That's the full intention behind it. And then at the end, also the lower mini roundabouts have a lower cost because you're not expanding the intersection as a whole. And then the installation itself is relatively low cost compared to other options. So one of the questions I assume we're going to have is why was Pendleton Avenue and High Street chosen for this project? We have a lot of intersections that are very similar to this across the entire region. Our agency serves all of Madison County plus Portville and Daleville in Delaware and Hancock counties. So we did look at lots of different options across the region for where we could potentially put this. We've worked very closely with the town of Pendleton in the past, and so we approached Scott and Hannah just to talk about what potential options there were within the community and whether there would be any interest in moving forward on a pilot project. Pendleton Avenue and High Street was formerly a two-way stop. Now it is a four-way stop sign. One thing that we wanted to test with the mini roundabout option was what does that look like compared to these two stop options? Because we know that there are a lot of two-way stop intersections across our entire region, especially here in communities like Pendleton, that have right angle crashes where we have two vehicles coming together within an intersection. Those happen a lot at two-way stop control intersections. So we initially targeted two-way stops. And then Scott had told us that you guys were interested in potentially converting that to a four-way stop anyway. So it seemed like a good candidate then for potentially comparing, well, what other options are there out there other than two-way and four-way? And the four-way, of course, works to eliminate largely those right angle crashes, but it also results in less than optimal operations, especially when we have intersections that are higher volume directly in one direction than the other.
No, that makes fun comment.
Yep.
So one of the things that we're putting up this four-way works right now, but as our traffic volume goes up, it'll eventually cause an issue here at State.
Scott, if you're gonna talk from over there, turn that microphone on and like push the button so it glows. There you go.
So what I said is that eventually the four-way works now, but eventually it will not as the traffic volume goes up. So anyway, I want to make sure that because if you look at it now, you're like, really? So the four-way is, in my eyes, as far as handling the downtown traffic, it's a temporary fix.
Thanks. One of the other criteria when you're using a mini roundabout is what the amount of truck and bus traffic is. Because of how larger vehicles are accommodated in a mini roundabout, you really don't want to have a percentage that's 4 or 5%. That's really the threshold that's recommended at a national level. And so when we looked at the traffic volumes and what it looks like for how many trucks and buses go through the area, this intersection had a low enough volume that it's below that threshold. But also a high enough volume that we can see as part of the pilot, how does that actually work with large vehicles? Because we do want to make sure that we're testing and identifying, what the actual operations would be in various cases. We do have a couple of different case studies that we think are important to reference here. The one that we've been looking at the most is actually in Cleveland, although there are several being proposed across the state of Indiana, and then a very similar one, actually two down in Columbus, Indiana as well. But the project in Cleveland was the closest to the same case as what we're looking at here in Pendleton. Franklin Boulevard in Cleveland, actually, they had just installed in 2022 7 mini roundabouts. These are very, very similar in size to the ones that we're proposing to test. Actually, in this case, they ended up ripping out two different traffic signals as well to replace them with these mini roundabouts. The volumes in this case on Franklin Avenue is very, very similar to Pendleton Avenue. And then the side streets are really similar to High Street. So we've actually had a chance to talk with Cleveland, the people who've been involved in the project over there, to see, you know, what were your original project, what was your original project supposed to be addressing? What were the issues that you were facing? And then since 2022, since the installation, how have the results really been? And they've actually been really, really forthcoming, really interested in trying to spread the information about the success actually of their project. They've seen a lot of traffic calming along the corridor. The residents along the corridor, while originally hesitant to go forward with this type of a project, have been very excited because of the impact for safety and speeds along the entire corridor. So they've seen speed reductions that are more residential, more what you would expect to see in this type of setting that they have, that also improves pedestrian safety. So they've been able to see a lot of improvements through their study corridor. All right, now for our installation, we are targeting an installation date of spring break, March 17th to the 21st. I'll be honest, we're a little bit behind schedule as far as the design is concerned. And so we're probably not going to make that. Oh, and materials. We still have to order materials for the installation. And so the spring break target may or may not be hit. We're still aiming for it, but the intention there was just lower volumes. So it would not be as impactful during the installation. And then similarly, we're planning to take it out at over fall break in October. Per the grant agreement, we are required to remove or have it fully removed by November 6th, no later than November 6th of this year. Because that's one of the actions that has to be included in the grant, the way that the grant was distributed from USDOT, since these are temporary projects. You had 18 months from the time of award until removal. So it will be out no later than November 6th, but we're targeting fall break. And then both the install and the removal were expected to take something like 5 to 7 days, depending on the final materials that are selected.
You have another slide that shows what the minimum would be if there was a live issue.
No, one discussion that we've had with the town is, you know, so our hope here is to install for 5 or 6 months. But if there were issues, then that's what ends up going into the findings report. There was issues and we removed the mini roundabout immediately.
So if we do run into problems, which I don't anticipate, but that's where I came up with that 2 months, you would have install. We have to have it up for 6 weeks. So the install and the removal, roughly 2 months. So the disruption would be 2 months. Worst case, we have something that's just not working.
And then we'll also be monitoring the intersection kind of throughout the duration of the project. We actually went ahead and did a 24-hour camera study when it was still a two-way stop control last summer, just before it was switched, so that we have that as kind of the base case. We'll do a second study here in another couple of weeks before the installation, so we can see what does it look like operationally for a 4-way stop. And then we'll do at least 1, but probably 2 camera studies while the mini roundabout is installed, so that we can identify things like speed impacts. We can see what the volumes are, if there's any differences in the volumes between each of the 3 cases. We can compare delay to see, you know, how long are vehicles being held up at this. So what are the actual operations of the intersection in all 3 cases? And then safety will be capturing things like, I don't know that we'll quite get to the near miss, but that's potentially something that we can look at, because of the short time period, not really expecting to see any sort of crashes or anything like that. So the safety measurement there will largely be on something like near misses. And then public feedback. We do have a web page. It's live now. I think it was linked in the Facebook post that was recently pushed out by the town. And so that web page is where we'll be housing information on the project as it's going forward. After we have had the install for a handful of weeks, Then we'll release a public survey so that we can start gathering feedback. What is the response? What's the reaction to the installation as it's been in and as people have adjusted to it? All of the impacts will be wrapped up in a findings report that we have to submit to Federal Highway as part of the grant. That's what we have to make sure that we have that to them before November as well. And then we're required to make the findings public, of course. So we'll be adopting all of the findings that we have into our Protect 2030 Safety Action Plan, which is also linked on that same webpage. That's the comprehensive safety plan that we put together as an agency looking at crashes across the entire region. And that's really what spurred all of this project. We have an issue at intersections, specifically two-way stop control and four-way stop control intersections across the region. We're trying to figure out what type of solutions there are to address those issues. Any questions?
Before we open up the question, do you have a slide? You showed a picture to me earlier today that showed how a semi would just come straight through over the roundabout, and then it showed the difference between the definition of a roundabout, a mini roundabout, and then a neighborhood circle.
Yeah, so some of those images didn't make it into this presentation. We'll have them available on the webpage. And then what I had shown Scott earlier is we're working on an informational board that can be posted both here in the town hall, as well as out on the site for the duration of the project that just provides additional information on, where the fundings come from, what the duration of the project is, what the intention behind the project is. And then it'll have on that board, both here and on the site, it'll have the link for the survey when that's released. So I don't have that here, but this graphic here is supposed to show what does a turning movement. So if this is a large vehicle turning left on the school bus, I guess, it would just turn directly across that center island. Those are 3 to 4 inches tall. So large vehicles are, perfectly capable of going straight over them. And then smaller vehicles will go out and around them.
So the temporary construction is going to be matting. It'll be pinned down into the asphalt. So these would be matting. They're wedged. The definition of a mini roundabout, it doesn't have a curb here, right? So that you can go across it. I think you call it a neighborhood circle, right? It may
Yeah.
have a curb and then landscaping in the middle, but this is a mini roundabout, and then the median will also be the rubber matting. The other thing too to note is that the town actually has wider right of way. It used to be, it was on the tax sale for a long time. It was a strip of railroad. Remember when the railroad, us old guys, when their tracks came through, went through past the doors of the lumber company, and then in front of Solutions for eBiz, that building there, which would be in the northwest corner. There's actually, we now own it. We took it in the tax sale, no cost to the town, but there's a little strip of right of way that we have there also. So if we ever do go to permanent construction, we'll have a lot more room to work with. So I just want to make sure people understood that. Where the pedestrian crosswalk will be, we're not sure if it'll be here yet or working with the engineers, or it'll be on the backside of the median. I think that's probably all the details we want to cover.
I think one of the big concerns I have, Scott, is emergency vehicles,
Yes, so
fire trucks,
the
ladder
engineers,
trucks.
all this meets design criteria for emergency vehicles, right? They're standard for designing criteria for turning radius, even on aerials. And we've gone so far as to measure what the turning radius would be on the aerial with the cameras now. It was less than what the standard design criteria for fire trucks is. So that should not be an issue. That's a standard design process. Every road intersection will go through is to make sure that emergency vehicles, especially aerials, can make it through. Because if an aerial can make it through, anything can make it through. So we've already checked that.
Scott, this is Chief Nodine Online.
Uh-huh.
So the question that I have is during this grant study period, if our apparatus turn on that mat that's pinned to the asphalt, who's going to pay for the repairs?
The repairs to the mats.
Mhm.
Yes.
So both,
No, it's designed for large vehicles to turn on the mats.
So if I come out High Street and turn south on Pendleton Avenue and my tandem axles of the aerial decide to chaw that up, it's gonna withstand that?
yes, yeah, the materials that we're looking at installing here are built to withstand large vehicles.
Okay, I understand they're built to withstand it, but what is the built to withstand? What is that? To drive over, to turn on? Because all the runs that we do south of town to the reformatory, anything like that, all of the fire engines always turn that way. And then to come back into town, we always go up High Street to, from Pendleton Avenue, and we're gonna have to turn on it to swing wide because of the narrow roads versus going up to the stoplight. That was just my question is if it does get to the point to where it's in disrepair, who's going to pay for this because it is of a grant if there is a chance of it getting damaged?
So as far as maintenance goes on the materials, that's one thing we need to talk to the vendors about is, I don't know for sure if in these types of temporary installations, if you purchase a little bit of extra materials up front, or if you can replace individual pieces, or if it still functions fully if a piece or two is broken. If it got to a stage where it was in full disrepair, then we would just fully remove the mini roundabout at that point. But that's a conversation we need to continue to have with the materials vendors is what individual pieces of it, because the vendors we've looked at have modular material systems, basically. You know, where you replace a couple of pieces at a time if there's damage to those.
Okay, thank you.
So to think of, have you ever seen a speed table, a rubber mat speed table? So this matting won't even be close to that height, but it'll be of similar construction.
Right, I'm, well aware, small vehicles going through a roundabout, I get that, not being able to do it, but you get the weight of a ladder truck on there that's actually turning. And I know what it does when we built the fire station, how much concrete we had to pour and we had to take up the bricks because of the turning radius being able to take up the bricks. So just by having to remove the bricks from when the fire station was built, I can't imagine what this could do if we're turning on it, not on a regular basis, but a substantial amount of times.
Well, I mean, the product is designed for that. It is designed for large vehicles, weighted vehicles to make the turn on it. So you're talking about sort of like the twisting movement of
Yeah,
as it turns.
yes.
So it's supposed to take it. If the material fails, then that's a manufacturer's issue. I'm sure they'll be responsible for replacement.
Okay,
The federal, they don't, US DOT doesn't mess around with that stuff. I'm sure they're very motivated for this product to succeed for obvious reasons.
Given that we're kind of in the very early stages of redoing State Street as far as like the new signals and all of that, is there anything that we need to be aware of as we change out these signals looking into the summer and into the fall with the proximity to that? In the Cleveland studies, is there anything that talks about minimum proximity or between another signal either or an intersection either signalized or not? No? Okay, so this passes muster for all the things that they've done in Cleveland as far as, okay.
Ryan, I have a couple questions for you. Thanks for the really good presentation. I do appreciate it. I guess a few thoughts or observations and maybe a couple questions. So first of all, I want to stress not in any way against roundabouts, not in any way against safety, and not in any way against innovation. I love all of those things. I would tell you, I think my biggest concern is I fear we're choosing to do that at a very wrong intersection my opinion being solely based on the footprint of said intersection, not the location of it for clarity. Scott, I also think you made an incredibly wise point where I think an incredible solution has been developed by the current four-way stop, but I completely agree with you that there will be a day, maybe sooner than we all want, where that will be more of a temporary fix. But relative to at least my observation, I just want to clarify if you guys feel the same. So my thought process, and again, I'm relating most of this just to my point of view on the size of the intersection, both in its physical mass, but also the curbing and even the proximity of buildings, as an example, particularly on the southeast corner. I would state that I believe that every school bus, every fire truck, every truck with a trailer, every delivery truck, at minimum, every day, every time they transition this, will need to drive not only over the center of the roundabout, but also over, I apologize, I don't know the terminology, but the median type materials that are there to navigate that. Do you guys agree with that assessment, or do you think I've interpreted this wrong?
I don't think that every single one will have to go over that. This is built with the same materials, by the way, as the
Okay.
center island, so it is also fully traversable.
Okay.
That's another aspect of the mini roundabout design, is that these can be completely mounted by vehicles. But maybe the larger vehicles, like a
Sure.
fire truck, may need to mount that a little bit. And actually, you can see just a little bit in this graphic here, that
Sure.
even like this corner
Yeah, I
is
noticed that.
slightly being driven over.
And the reason I point that out too is, again, I'm thinking of the intersection, its current footprint, but there are some large curbing and trees and buildings in also close proximity. And so like I thought several of the pictures here, even in the Cleveland example, I'm basing it only on a single image on your PowerPoint, let alone the last one. In every one of these images, I can view them and say, hey, that makes a heck of a lot of sense. That looks like a really good solution based on the location and surface area in those intersections. I also don't know certainly anything about the Cleveland case, but I think, the point that Chief Nodine made about proximity to the fire station, the point that Mrs. Stewart has made about proximity for our bus path, those are key concerns for me. The one other thing I wanted to ask you, and looking at your data set, you noted that I think 1.8% of the traffic flow through there was large trucks or buses. Can you clarify for me, like when you guys did that traffic study or that snapshot, when was that? And what quantified that 1.8%, i.e. was school in session, would be among my questions.
I would have to go and double check when this particular study was done.
Okay, and that's a fair response. I would like to know that. In particular, in my final question, if you don't mind going back to, I believe it is, I think it's your third slide, I apologize. Going back to the one that shows the graphic of the vehicles driving over. The only other, again, observation I would make, I think you guys have made a great and clear case that center island is meant to be driven over, right? I think that was a very important point that needed to be made tonight. My concern is simply, again, huge fan of roundabouts. However, I'm going to also acknowledge the fact that I think with change, people do get confused. And my concern is, so just as an example, if I am that passenger car that's depicted, I do wonder what the reaction and what the risk looks like when a large vehicle comes and is driving over it. I don't worry about our emergency vehicles because they should and will have their lights and sirens engaged, which should hopefully stop the intersection as a whole. I think that'll be fine. But when I think about our school buses, trucks with trailers, semis, delivery trucks, et cetera, again, I'm talking because of the size of the intersection, not because of the concept. I have concerns of the threat that could be to motorists. And regarding accidents, I am not aware of a single accident that has occurred or a near accident since you guys did a great job making that a four-way stop. And so again, I think you solved what was a major problem and I commend everyone for it. But I just want to be blunt and respectful also in saying those are my concerns for the project.
So a couple things, more education. So a regular roundabout, the inside diameter, in a lot of engineering terms, it's actually called a shoulder. It is designed to be driven, just like a regular shoulder. So I get calls, people upset at a roundabout, they're Heritage Way as you go out of town. They're upset because they see a semi going over the shoulder.
Sure.
And I'm like, that's the equivalent of being upset that a semi sitting on the side of the road on the shoulder.
Sure.
So, most people don't understand that even a regular roundabout is designed for larger vehicles to go up onto the shoulder. Now, some are not, like if you have like landscaping or public art that you want to protect, or there's signage that you want to put there, then you will sometimes see the curbs, but then the radiuses of that are changed to make it easier for the larger trucks. So as far as public education, most people don't understand that regular roundabouts are designed for larger vehicles to drive over to. You just drive over, not through the middle.
Scott, I totally agree with you. And that's what I would say in terms of opposing traffic. Agree with everything you said. My concern is though I'll put myself in that passenger car and, you know, a school bus or a semi or a truck with a trailer or delivery truck
Yeah.
is there. And if you encroach that far on me in that intersection, I think I'll be fine, but I worry about others that may not be. I think that's a pretty radical scenario, which again, I'm stating only because at least my point of view on the size of the intersection and I'll call it the tension points that would exist on the perimeter. It's a tough intersection
Yeah.
to manage.
So it's, the main criteria is what I talked about, calm the traffic down, but yet not doing it in a way that's gonna back up the traffic, which I really believe is gonna happen.
I agree with you.
But the other thing about that intersection is there is more right of way there, and it flares out in 3 of the 4 corners. The one that's at the lumber yard, a lot of back and forth with the concrete guy, he still didn't build it the way we wanted, and that corner jets out and it's turned into a speed bump. But we have full intentions of pulling that curve out anyway. So if the right of way that exists, the old railroad right of way that exists, that's there's a flare as you come up Pelton Avenue to the north to the downtown. There's a flare at that intersection. So 3 of the 4 have a flare. The one intersection that doesn't is where the bank parking lot is now. That would be the northeast corner. That's the only corner that doesn't have an existing normal wider or future ability to lessen the radius on the outside curve. That makes sense.
The other thing that we spend a lot of time talking about pedestrian safety and we want this to be a walkable community and all of that. Within seconds of that post going live on our Town of Pendleton Facebook page, I had texts from people saying, okay, I'm not opposed to a roundabout, but how do I cross the street here? Because they have enjoyed the 4-way stop. If you're walking to Sophie's, if you're walking to the lumber yard, if you're, doing any of the pedestrian things that we do in this town. And I guess I'm concerned from a pedestrian standpoint that, I get that we don't want traffic to stop or back up, but we want it to be calm. I feel like this is a step backward from what we have now from a pedestrian standpoint. And I just don't, it just makes me nervous, especially, and I guess the order of operations would have been really nice if we would have kept it a 2-way, then transitioned to this, and then pulled it out and gone to a 4-way. Like, I don't love that I feel like we've gone from 2-way to 4-way to a roundabout to back to a 4-way, and it may go back to a roundabout, we don't know. Like that, I don't just on a philosophical level, I don't love rules that we don't enforce. And I feel like we've got a roundabout that we're telling people not to really treat as a roundabout. I don't mean to be rude about it. And I know you guys have all spent a lot of work on and time on this, and it's been in the hopper for close to 2 years, according to the date stamps I got today. I just don't understand how this is going to work in a positive way. And I feel like anytime that there is somebody that has a close call there, either on foot or in a car, that it has the potential to really be devastating more than, okay, everybody was stopped and we accidentally turned into each other versus we got cars moving in all directions and they may be going across the center line. And that could and I drive around roundabouts every day throughout Hamilton County, Indianapolis, I'm not afraid of a roundabout. But where this is, it just makes me very, very nervous.
I have to agree. I think public safety needs to be our #1 concern.
But, Brian, do you have anything before I open it
Yeah.
up for public comment? Okay.
Just a question for Scott. Scott, you talked about altering the, I'm not sure what phrase you used, but basically the curbing around there. Could you say that again, what you intend to do in the future?
Yeah, so if this would be the lumberyard corner, this is the bank. Well, I'm trying not to get that good eyes. So this is going to the middle of town, right? So the lumberyard curve, the way it was constructed, we were not happy with it. We planned to take it out and reconstruct it. It was done by the developer. We actually he ripped it out twice. Third time. So that curve radius will be less. Right now, it's off. It's almost like a sharp, like this has a little bit of a flare out. This is in front of what I call Kilmer's old law office, right? That was that corner. This has a little bit
Integrity.
of a flare to it. It's integrity, sorry. Okay, integrity business, sorry if I insulted somebody. And then we have the railroad right away, so this curve can actually be widened out. It won't be on the temporary project. This is if it goes to permanent construction.
Did we actually get those parcels? I don't think we've gotten them yet.
You know where we are with that?
Hannah and I looked them up a few weeks ago and they were not ours. So I don't think that expanded right of way.
But there is an existing
Right, yeah.
flare out already.
But those parcels, I'm just saying, aren't ours yet.
So this curve is the one curve that doesn't have a flare to it or a possibility of a flare without purchasing right away. All the other intersections in town that it would be around here, they're a lot more squared off and the turning rate is a lot tighter.
And I guess the reason I asked that, it's probably a better question for you is, let's say we do this temporarily, we take it out October, November, then what's the timeline for applying for the federal grant?
We don't know when those will come back.
And I guess never applied for a federal grant, but I guess my question would be if we do this as the test. And then we apply for the federal grant and say, but the intersection will be a lot different when we apply for the grant than when we actually tested it. You know, does that change? You understand what I'm saying? I mean, if our test is this, but then when it comes time to apply for the federal grant, we're gonna say, well, it's really not gonna be this. It's
Right.
gonna be something different than what we tested. Does that matter for the federal grant?
No, what you would say there is that, we worked within the constraints of the existing intersection, which we're required to do for this temporary. We're not allowed to excavate or anything like that. So we worked within the existing constraints of the location. And if you applied for additional funding, then you would just say, our findings show that we need to make these changes in order to make it operationally work more long-term, and then that would be accepted.
Okay. But time-wise, there's no timeline on.
No. Okay. So, my point is that these roundabouts are gonna be a reality. They're gonna be coming more and more into your neighborhood. Why not jump on the opportunity to test it out instead of spending money, find out we hate it, when we can put it up temporarily and find out we hate it or we like it, right? I would say if the community doesn't like it, what we'll probably do is wait for other communities to put them in until everybody in Pendleton gets used to them, seeing them other places, and they'll have to, start putting them in after that. But just like the major roundabouts at first, everybody was terrified of them. Now you can't imagine not having, right? Can you imagine the backup at 300 West and State Road 38?
I love that roundabout. I use that one all the time.
Yeah.
If I'm facing the wrong way at that intersection and I want to loop around, I do it. It's great. I love a roundabout. My issue isn't with a roundabout. My issue is with where it is, it just makes me very uneasy when, like, especially in the summer, when I see kids out riding a bike and all of that. It just terrifies me that the kids are not gonna be able to anticipate whether that truck is gonna go through the middle or go all the way around.
Do we have statistics on pedestrians? Do you have, we talked about,
We do, not
Park
for
rec.
this. I don't know that we have it at this particular intersection.
Okay, do we want to go for public comment now?
Sure.
I got one
Oh,
question.
wait, Lily's got something.
Scott, you addressed this earlier, the crosswalks. This material in these, what do you call them, splitter island?
yeah,
Okay, look like golf tees to me, but laying down.
Yes.
Okay, when you have that crosswalk cross there, that section where it intersects, is that flat ground level or two pieces, or do you have, people have to walk over a little hump?
Well, it really depends on the actual installation. This one here is showing that the island itself is split. And just to clarify, this is not the current design
that's not
for,
our,
for this specific intersection. This is just a graphic pulled from-
Well, we have a lot of
For
people on
examples.
canes and walkers and stuff, and we have enough trouble with them walking on our regular sidewalks, you know?
Yeah, so a long-term design would have to look specifically at, how you want to treat those. You
Right
could do-
now-
You could do raised
right now,
crosswalks
right
here as
now,
well
what
if you
we're
want to.
advocating, right now, what we're advocating is the crosswalk.
So before the intersection?
It is safest.
People play Frogger all day long out here, so I guess. Okay, do we want to, are we good for public comment now?
I'm good.
Okay. Public comment? Then, yeah, come on up. If you just don't mind stating your name, we don't need your address, but your name would be great.
I'm Yvonne Chastain. I happen to own Integrity Madison County, which is why I'm
Oh, I
here.
insulted you. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I
Can
wasn't
tell you what I
insulted. but-
really wanted to say? Back when it was a barber shop.
Yes, and I've heard that story many
Yes,
times.
Sorry.
I have just a couple questions. I'm a tax preparation business and I would like to know if High Street is going to be closed and my parking lot inaccessible during tax season. Number one. And number two, I'm questioning what's happening with the street parking right there because myself and my staff park along there because we have a very small parking lot to allow our clients access. Those are my two main questions.
So, this one parking spot, let's see, so if we stayed orientated, this is going towards the middle of town, so this is Pendleton Avenue. Then here would be Integrity, right? So this parking spot will at least temporarily come out for this project. The fire department's asked for that anyway, so we'll just do that in conjunction. And then probably at the lumber company, this first parking spot will come out during the project. Not, well, current, I know the one that I talked about, the fire department requested, that will probably end up being permanent. That's across the street from the grocery store there. Yes, so, right, this is where the bank is. And then, so lucky for you, there is serious negotiation right now and it's closed that the town is going to lease these parking spaces from the bank for public parking. So you're gonna have, just as a side note and not relative to this project. But it's probably not a bad time to announce that is gonna end up being, it's going very favorable that we'll probably do that. Just like we lease the parking spaces behind Highland Martin's insurance right back here. Those are, the town leases those parking spots for public parking. So you're actually, in a very short time, gonna see a significant increase in public parking in that section of the town.
Scott, question from the chief up here on Zoom. Which parking spots were you referring to that the fire department's requested?
It's on State Street, and as you come
It's Pendleton Avenue.
Pendleton Avenue.
Pendleton Avenue, as you come on It would be the north, east corner, that first spot.
Okay,
Your assistant chief asked for it.
okay,
He asked it to be removed so he can have better sight distance when the ambulance uses that.
okay. And that's, yeah, I mean, I forgot about which one you were talking about because I can't see the
Yeah.
pointer if you're using a pointer, so.
Okay. Any other public comment?
I'm Candy Stewart. I work for South Madison Community School Corporation and I'm the transportation director. And I just have some questions. I heard you say that the lip or whatever you're gonna call it when we drive over that is 3 to 4 inches. Is that correct?
It's a wedge that goes up to 3, 4, so you would wedge up, wedge.
Is it similar to what goes on out here at Heritage?
No, that's a lot. That's a lot. That shoulder on that turn around about it's.
Because I mean, when you drive
It's not
over
gonna
that,
have a bump.
you've got kids
Yeah,
who
no, you're not.
they're gonna hit their heads
No,
or
you're
fall
not
out of their
gonna-
seat.
no, you're not. Well, I hope they're driving that fast.
Well, no, but when you hit something like
Yeah,
that,
no, it's a wedge. It's designed. The wedge.
because when we go out here to Fall Creek Academy and we pull into their parking lot. I mean, seriously, I've been driving and I creep over it and the kids hit their heads
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah. No, I would imagine it would have at least a 1 inch lip. We haven't seen the design specs, but I can't imagine it being much more than that. And then
So
it
are the
wedges up.
intent is to drive over that triangular looking thing before you get to the center?
No,
You would stay to the right of it?
yeah, I would think it could be it would be a rare case if you did that, but it shouldn't be a problem if you do get them. Cause it should be a wedge too.
I mean, I'm 100% in agreement with Corey. I think that's a terrible location to do a pilot program. I don't think that intersection is big enough. Because like they said, when we're in a school bus and we're coming across there, or even if we go straight, let alone turn. Where's everybody gonna go? They're not gonna understand what's going on. I think it's too confusing. I just think there are better intersections in town that
You have a suggestion?
I do.
Okay.
Well, and it may not work because it's State Road 67 and Water Street,
Yeah, 67.
right? Or 67 and North Pendleton Avenue.
Yeah, those are not.
The park coming out of there, I have the same problem. I can't see to the left when I'm pulling out there because people are parked on the east side of North Pendleton Avenue.
So geometrically, that wouldn't be bad, but it wouldn't. It's.
It's a definitely bigger intersection. Down here by the park. Next time. Just past Waters.
Falls Park Drive and.
But what about when you guys snowplow? I mean,
It's designed for snowplows. That's why the lip can't. be-
even with the lips,
Yeah, that's why the lip can't be. It's just like the speed bump in front of East Elementary. They have to lift up for that. Right?
In front of
Not
Pendleton
East-
Elementary?
On East Street in front of them. Same thing. Speed bumps are there, right? The school requested them, the guys have to lift the wall. So it'd be the same thing here.
I just think that's a terrible location to do a.
Thanks. Any other public comment? Nothing else? Okay.
Scott, I have one more question for you. At the beginning of your discussion, you made a comment that it would not cost our taxpayers no money.
Right. This is a
Just want to
federal
make that
project.
clear.
The only local contribution is that our guys will lay down. That's, it's an in-kind local contribution.
And use our equipment to, I mean, if they, yeah,
Right.
I will.
sure.
Early on, you mentioned a bump out. I don't know what a bump out is over here.
So it would be, think of taking one of the parking spots and landscaping it.
On State Street.
So and we're actually, that's all gonna be in conjunction also with some, parking. So on Tyler Mount Martin's lot, this entrance exit is gonna be closed, so we're gonna have extra spots there. So even though we're gonna lose on each side a parking spot, we're actually gaining more parking because we're modifying the sidewalk here, that'll be closed. We're gonna add parking there. And then that's actually, and then because of that, there's gonna be a few more spots inside the parking lot. So the net parking downtown will be the bump out reduction.
It's the beautiful.
I don't know if everybody's aware that we've had several, and we caught them on camera, several pedestrian misses in this little 4 block area. So we upped our game and decided to get real aggressive about pedestrian safety, calming traffic down, and then we're gonna stop lights here at the 2 intersections. We're gonna reconstruct those a little smart, that will allow for easier flow of traffic, because we all know what it's possible to do. So by having this smart intersection, we'll be able to tell how many cars are waiting at Pendleton Avenue and on Main Street. So if nobody is waiting, the light will never turn red. It'll stay green for State Street, so we can get that rush hour traffic.
Well, something else that I could suggest, and I thought you and I talked about it the last time when they did the resurfacing. Moving where the cars going east, have them stop back farther so the buses can make that turn
Yeah.
without hitting a car in that first parking spot.
We didn't, when we strike, we need that, we didn't.
Well, not down at the post office.
For which,
Well,
are you talking the one in front of the Stevenson building?
Mhm.
Yeah, we're probably gonna modify that.
yeah, it needs pushed back, because if you're turning off Main, you know, those 84 passenger buses, they drop in 3 feet every time you make a turn left or right.
Right.
And so it's just difficult if there's cars sitting there.
Thanks, Ken.
I watched them here, since we did that, they make that turn along.
As long as that car that's in that first spot, that it have that.
Well, they go over the stop bar. Just whack them once, they'll learn.
Oh, geez.
Hey, my name is Caleb Chastain. I'm Yvonne's son. I help operate the integrity business. I had a question, maybe 2 questions and a comment, but the one just logistical question. I know you guys were talking about where the crosswalks would go. So I had the thought, it looks like in that illustration, which I know this isn't the illustration of that intersection, but it looks like in that illustration, if they go through the side humps that the side humps break and there's not that. So like, is that crosswalk going to be
Are
flat
you talking about the
plane?
median?
Yeah, is that going to be a flat plane of crosswalk?
Yes.
Because I work with
So-
folks with disabilities, so I had the
Yeah.
ADA
Right.
question and
Right.
concern with just, pushing a wheelchair over that would be a pain.
Yeah.
Uh,
No,
Depending.
so it's in design right now, and that's one of the things that there's been a back and forth on where this would be located.
Mhm.
So I think I've made it pretty clear to them that we need to look at this first, and then if we do this, it does need to be, they call this a refuge. So that when people are crossing and they made a mistake and started crossing too early, the traffic is too close, at least they can have a refuge here.
Okay, like a pause spot, yeah.
Yeah.
That road is not wide enough to have refuge.
I would
Yeah,
not feel
again,
safe standing in the middle.
All of
it
us have
while
expressed
cars
that
go
that
by.
seems a little tight for all this, but and to add on.
Better than nothing.
To add on to that question, I was, the other option, you guys talked about moving the crosswalk back behind those little medians. And then my question with that logistically is are the cars then expected to stop and yield before the
So-
crosswalk all the way back,
So
like
that's
a
a
car
very good
length
question.
behind?
So part of the design evaluation is to look at site distance,
Okay,
right? So, what happens with site distance when you put it here versus here? They serve, it, just so you
Yeah.
know, they're not,
I was just curious about that, I
yeah,
suppose.
they're not using Google Maps to design it. They actually surveyed it and have the exact dimensions.
Okay. And it's adding up and according to those dimensions. And then I had a little curiosity, I suppose, when you guys were talking about the snow plows. So what's the method for plowing that circle then? Like you would have to lift up the plow to get through it. So
Yeah.
then does the circle just remain snowed?
No,
Or do they
well-
salt it or? I don't know what would
No,
happen
that's a
there.
good
So I was
question.
curious about that.
Yeah, no, you can salt it. No, the guys will have to lift the blade and they would,
Just get out and shovel it or?
no, they would lift the blade.
Okay.
They can lift the blade, they can tilt the blade forward, back, left, right, up and down.
Got it.
So you would raise the blade just like you have to at the.
And then
speed
just
bumps
go
on
around the
East Street
circle.
In front of the elementary, right?
Okay. And then the last question was just, I was just gonna reiterate my mom's question about, when this is installed, what does the duration of time look like for the installation, if we know that? And will it close down the streets? Like she said, it's our busy season.
Yeah.
It goes until about April,
we
so
will-
I figured if you guys have to push back, it might be advantageous to push, I mean, we are a tax business right there, so it might be advantageous to push it back like mid-April
So,
for installation.
so we don't anticipate closing the streets.
Oh, okay,
Right? They're putting down mats. If there's any, they'll be flagging, right? While they put the mats down.
got it. So there's pass through.
Yeah, they'll be able to pass through just like any other, repairs that happen. on the street. In some ways, it's almost very similar to that. It'll be, I think, less obtrusive to traffic than when we have a water main break.
Yeah.
We're actually ditching, across the road.
Yeah. That was annoying.
Yeah.
Or like when they had to cut a tree down recently and
Yeah.
close the whole thing down for a whole day and it was really loud.
Right.
Yeah, no, I share some of the cautionary thoughts that several people have shared, but I also I think it's a cool solution if it works. I think it is I agree that it would be, if it works, if it actually is fluid and
Right.
works in that spot, I think it would be better than a four-way stop. I love the flow of a roundabout, but and I think this is kind of a neat variety of, but it does seem kind of baffling in my mind when I look at that intersection, the tightness of it. So I agree on that point, but if they have it surveyed that it would work, then those are my questions.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
So I totally agree with your comment. It's cool if it works. I would hate to spend a bunch of money.
Yeah, I like that it's a trial. That seems like.
Yes, and then spend a bunch of money and find out it's not gonna be good. Right?
Okay,
There's no public comment.
sure. You came in at the exact right time.
Normally do. I was on Zoom. It won't let me talk. I'm not
Okay.
fancy enough. I just want to clear something up so it's public. I, as assistant chief, did not ask for spots to be removed. I, as a citizen that's lived on Pendleton Avenue for 11 years, asked last summer why the four-way stop that was voted on hadn't been implemented. Because it was hard to see traffic to the north. So I just want to clear up that I did not ask for spots to be
In
removed.
your official capacity.
Yeah, and the four-way stop works perfectly fine since being implemented. Those intersections aren't wide enough to turn onto in a pickup truck from Pendleton Avenue to High Street. Like I said, I've lived on Pendleton Avenue 11 years now. But I wanted to run down here because Zoom doesn't work. Clear that up, make sure that I did not ask for any of that. I just asked for the four-way that was voted on months prior to, that wasn't implemented
Right.
when it was voted on.
Yeah.
So that's all I got for that. Thank you.
Are you gonna run back?
I think he needs to take a breath.
Okay, all right. There's no official action on this. Scott signed an MOU or an agreement to do it,
Yeah.
so we can collaborate offline, I guess, about what we do next.
I think I'll, if I may.
Yeah.
I would give my formal recommendation. I know it's not a voting item, but I would say I appreciate the presentation sincerely. I think there are some very good, and there's a ton of good intent in this. But what I would say, at least from my perspective, and also I think from some public comment, I want to just go on the record of saying I'm not in favor of doing the project at that intersection. That does not mean I'm not in favor of a project of this nature, because I think it's fantastic, but specifically to that intersection, unless we can modify the surface area and the boundaries, I just think this is unfortunately a poor decision that I don't think is the right thing for our residents.
And I guess like as just a clarity for me, so we're still in engineering on this. We're still not sure where we're gonna put the pedestrian crossings and all of that. Is that gonna come back to us at some point and let us see that?
I could certainly.
Cause I feel like this kind
Certainly.
of started in 2023 and then it kind of, like, we've talked about it in concept, but until I was on the MCOG policy call last week, I didn't realize that we were like imminently getting ready to do this. And so I guess that's an internal flaw of ours, that we didn't understand the timetable. Cause I think that we all would have liked to have been a little bit more understanding about what this was before it went on Facebook and then Pendleton Chatter, and we don't know what's really going on. We don't know how to answer the right questions. So I guess once we get that, I mean, what's the timetable on getting the engineering finished? Like where we're gonna put the crosswalks and all of that? Do we know?
Yeah, so we are in the final engineering stages now. So we are waiting for some feedback from Federal Highway
Okay,
on whether or not we need any changes. And then it should be good to provide anytime.
okay,
I'm sure we can provide over the preliminary stuff too.
okay.
Ryan, one last thing. I know I mentioned it, but I'm just going to ask formally for follow-up. Relative to your data that you presented, the truck percentage 1.8, can you please validate the data source and the timing and how that relates? I think that'd be helpful as well. Like, again, if you're taking that sample during a normal week where school's in session, everything, I think that's a great sample, right? If it was taken in the middle of summer, I think we have a flawed sample. And so I just would like to know, if you don't mind, please.
Yep, yeah, I can send that number over to Scott to share with.
Thank
him.
you so much, sir.
Okay. Thanks. Any other comment regarding?
Well, I have to speak up with Corey's feelings. I have big concern about that intersection and public safety and fire apparatus. I know it's been explained, but being in public safety 35 years, I have that concern also, but public safety is my number one, and in that location, I don't understand why, but I just wanted that to be known.
Sure. Anything else you want to add?
Not necessarily. It's not all that important. I understand the study's been done at this intersection, but Candy's comment about different locations that coming out of the park is certainly an interesting. I don't know, that's not where the study was done, but that's. For some reason, my initial reaction to that is I feel better about that than I do this.
Yeah.
That's, yeah,
I would say.
so.
Okay,
Well, so that's one that we actually probably look at. The town ever got serious about doing that would not be around. Think more like neighborhoods, right?
Right.
So. And the reason for this is safety. It is safety.
I don't know. I get that. I understand that we can say that this is gonna be safer, and I hope that it is. But I sit out here nearly daily and see people try to cross when the person is on the walk sign, like, hey, like, let's walk, and if they're turning right, there is a solid chance you're gonna get mowed down. Like, I know that we want it to be safer and we can say the modeling looks like it's gonna be safer, but the way that the drivers behave in the downtown area here, I'm just not sold, and I just feel like we're asking for a catastrophe, but that's just me. So I'm not a traffic engineer. I'm just a person who watches people try to cross the street in this town a whole lot. So, okay, moving on. Recommendation for bid award, Elm Street, Main Street Reconstruction Project.
Yeah, so this bid recommendation involves a road construction project for Elm Street and Main Street. So Elm Street runs from the South Pendleton Avenue, then westbound to Main Street, and then the Main Street portion of it runs from Elm Street south to Madison Avenue. This project, it would include water, electric, storm improvements, as well as ADA compliance with sidewalks, as improvements to sidewalks, and even new sidewalks, and mill and overlay. A week ago, the 6th of February, we received 5 bids for this project, and those range from right under 900,000 all the way up to 1.9 million. So our engineers projections there kind of fell right dead center in the middle at about 1.5 million for this project. So we felt like that we really had a good representation for the project. The engineer really took a deep dive into the bid packet that was presented by our lowest bidder, which was DC Construction. And all the specs were met. Also, all of the submittals were provided and met as well. So our engineer has provided for you a recommendation to accept this bid from DC Construction at the amount of $896,135.29. That bid, if it is approved by your board, then we will submit all the necessary documents to NDOT for our community crossings grant, and we'll be ready to get this underway here 1st of May.
So a
Any
couple notes
questions?
to this, it's once again, a 75-25 split, we put in 25%. The original engineer's estimate was 1.4 million, so you can see it's almost $500,000. Right at $500,000 below the estimate. Engineer's estimate, so we budgeted more than it looks like we'll need. However, every project we've encountered, we've hit the famous limestone in Pendleton. We've always had some extra
Change orders.
change orders to cover the cost of when we hit the stone. Because you don't know until you're into it. We learn that. We relearn that lesson every project. So it's just probably it's just accepted. We're going to encounter that. So the $500,000 cushion, which is almost a third, is not standard.
We worked with DC Construction. They did our recent improvement to our cemetery, as well as they did Water Street there. It encompassed a lot of the utility improvements as well as to the roadway. So they're local.
Great.
From a scope perspective, what are the specific utility elements on this?
Yeah, so we've got water line improvement that runs from Elm Street. It goes from Pendleton Avenue to about, there's like an alleyway right in there. We've got a little bit of improvement that's going to go north of that alleyway. We also have electric lines that are going to be moved, relocated slightly in places that are necessary. Not a lot of electrical changes, but yet just some necessary relocations to be able to accommodate our sidewalks that we're going to be putting on both sides of the roadway, as well as the improvement then to the road. One of the major pieces to this project is the stormwater infrastructure. So last year we had our Elm Street drain project that went along that railroad. So basically this project is going to be kind of connecting our A, B, and C. So that railroad piece, that drain, the stormwater system is going to connect into that storm system that runs. And so our storm will then be able to prevent a lot of flooding that we've experienced in this area. And so it's going to connect and be able to draw and control that stormwater management from Pendleton Avenue all the way through Elm Street, as well as down the railroad, and then connect into Main Street, and then it'll dump out into the creek then there by behind Arabian Point. So, and then we also have some storm improvement that we're going to be making, some inlets down there on Main Street, as well as widening, kind of making the road a little bit more congruent from the north part of Main Street to the south there at Arabian Point. And then also a lot of sidewalk improvements as well. So, yeah,
That's
so
great.
it's going to be great to be able to complete that project from end to end.
So real quick, so we know we have flooding on Pendleton Avenue at Elm Street. It's one of the 3 drops of rain and they'll start flooding there. So that will be improved. That'll be part of this project. So that drain, you always work downhill up, right? So the discharge is into the ditch there at Kyle Smith's property. And so that it'll be extending, just the next phase will be extending that thing across to the other side of Elm Street. The other thing that we're gonna ask your patience on is that we're gonna brick, the plan is to brick Elm Street. But the initial construction will be not including the brick because Community Crossings does not allow that to, they don't pay for brick streets. So it's being designed in a way so that that will be the next phase of construction will be the bricks, but it won't be part of this project. Does that make sense?
There is a pretty major storm drain that's going to run down the center of Elm Street. It's going to be inverted. So that's going to be able to naturally kind of pull all of that water down, like Scott said, to the south. We also have the Thomas Pendleton House that's right there at the corner of Main and Elm Street. And so a lot of their property is actually in public right of way. So we've got a lot of drainage issues there that we're going to be able to address for them as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great. Any questions for Denise?
So
Okay, I'll wait for Jerry for just a second and then I'll call for a motion. Do you have any questions for Denise regarding the recommendation for bid award on the Main Street, Elm Street reconstruction project? Okay, if there aren't any questions, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
Make the motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second for approval of the recommendation for the bid award for the Elm Street, Main Street reconstruction project. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Moving on to ordinance 2502, amending the UDO. Like we say every month, the planning commission treats the UDO like it is a living document, and therefore we have some amendments for this month.
Yeah, so we just have 2 minor amendments that were proposed by Plan Commission, given favorable recommendation for you tonight. The first one was encouraging kind of the enlargement of our tree canopy. So currently our standards is that when development comes in, we've got our residential subdivisions, which is actually major subdivisions. So the difference between major and minor. So major is 4 lots or more. Minor subdivision is 3 lots or less. Our current standards to require street trees, which is street trees within the public right of way. It is calculated every 90 feet, approximately, we need to have a tree there within that right of way. What has been proposed is that we extend that requirement to minor subdivisions, all commercial, or all subdivisions, which could include industrial as well as commercial subdivisions. And then the other pieces are one-off development. So our site development plan, that could be a commercial, like say Wolfies or Dollar Tree. Those were 1 lot development. So this requirement would apply to them as well, to require them to plant street trees. There's different specifications that would apply to them as well. The other piece to that is just adding in a kind of a little disclaimer that if there is any constraints that are uncontrollable upon that site, that the administrator can waive that requirement. It could be utilities, overhead lines and whatnot. So that is the first amendment that Plan Commission would like to recommend for your approval. And then if we want to vote together at the
Yep, we
same
do it
time.
together
Okay,
typically,
perfect.
yeah.
Okay, then the second one is just more kind of to increase our efficiency administratively. So with this is that when we come to the point when there's a residential subdivision, commercial subdivision, we have these roadway, these new roads that are improved. We have then, once those have been fully accepted, we will accept those as a town, and those will be accepted via materialized through a resolution. But at that time, what we'd like to ask is that developer to be responsible for submitting our parcel ID numbers for our common spaces. That is detention ponds, that's playgrounds, that's trail systems, because we have a stormwater fee program. And so having them and prompting them, it's kind of a part of kind of like what we require them for our as-built. We would like to have that as their responsibility to turn that information over to us. So then we have that on an annual revolving basis. And we'll turn that into our taxpayer system process for that program. So that is our second amendment we'd like to propose for your consideration.
Any questions regarding these amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance? Any public comment regarding these amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance? Okay, if there aren't any, I will entertain a motion for approval of ordinance 2502, amending the UDO.
Motion to approve?
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second for ordinance 2502, amending the UDO. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Moving on to 2503, rescinding ordinance 2008, the COVID policy. We are coming out of COVID 5 years later. This is one that we kind of have neglected to rescind, and it really is not, there's not a whole lot in here other than the providing full-time employees with 80 hours of paid sick time and part-time employees with sick time equal to the average number of hours a part-time employee works in a 2-week period. At this point, we're not seeing as many COVID cases, but we're seeing a whole lot of influenza A and influenza B. So if you're sick, and I would like for you to stay home so the rest of us don't get sick. So going back to our standard PTO model for that. So that is what ordinance 2503 is rescinding that policy that we started back in 2020. Any questions? Any public comment? There aren't any questions or comments. I'll entertain a motion for approval of 2503, rescinding the ordinance 2008, the COVID policy.
I'll make a motion to amend. Rescind.
Rescind, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a motion
That's
and a second for ordinance 2503, rescinding ordinance 2008, the COVID policy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Moving on to resolution 2501, resolution for opposition to Senate Bill 491. You want me to talk about it? You're going to talk. Last week at Planning Commission, the Planning Commission asked us to voice our opposition to Senate Bill 491, which was sponsored by Mike Gaskell from Fall Creek Township. And it's been in committee. It came out of committee today with a few edits. Basically, in essence, what this does, and Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically allows for non-contiguous annexation by municipality within the county, within Madison County specifically. When it was originally proposed, it didn't have any restrictions on what municipality that would be. Coming out of committee today, it now spells out that it's Alexandria. Really, the reason the Planning Commission wanted this was because, I mean, Denise, you can elaborate, you were there. Really, they were afraid of encroachment, but also we didn't want anybody to think that Pendleton had plans to go out and annex non-contiguous property for use of an industrial facility. Is that correct?
That is correct. They just felt that it was not quite clear the ramifications, the impacts on surrounding properties, like municipalities, and just not letting the good, floor plan. So that's kind of the reason why they asked.
So any comments regarding this? I guess what this looks like as far as us opposing it would be sending letters to our local legislators as well as the pro tem there. Any thoughts?
Rob, loaded question to you, but is there any precedent in the state that you can reference or any insight you can offer all of us on this topic?
Councilman, any precedent with respect to
This-
having an official resolution to do this? I think I don't recall actually having one that I've worked on, but I am aware that to the extent that this council would like to express its interest, this is one of the vehicles to do that.
Sure.
And certainly, I think it's set forth enough to request further input on the purpose of the bill. from that standpoint.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
No, I think I would just offer, this looks like legal waste. Not relative to our work, but the bill that was filed,
Yeah.
and I don't understand it.
We try really hard to stay pretty insulated from state matters here at the Pendleton Town Council. This is one where it bled over into planning commission and what they do and therefore into us. So
Understood.
I will entertain a motion for approval of resolution 2501, resolution for opposition to Senate Bill 491.
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second for resolution 2501, resolution for opposition to Senate Bill 491. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Okay. No more new business. Any other public comment? Not everybody rush at once. Okay. Anything from anybody up here?
Thank you all for your input
Thank you
tonight.
all.
Yes. Okay. I'll make a motion to adjourn at 7:31.